Welcome to Buckle Up with Simon and Brian, an ultra running conversation. How are you doing this evening, Simon?
I'll be honest, Brian, I'm kind of still in the clouds a little bit from Cocodona just a few days ago. It was rough, it was fun, but it was rough. But what about yourself? How are your knees? How did they hold up?
My knees held up fine. I'm not sure if everything else did, quite honestly. Again, just like you mentioned, we are just a couple days removed from Cocodona and traveling back to our home bases, and I got a little bit of brain fog going on. I got the highs of highs and the lows of lows. Gosh, if I sit down for a moment on the couch, it feels like I just fall asleep instantly, which means I'm tired and I need some rest, which is fine, which can be expected, but it's been challenging to get back to reality and society and start doing the normal things again after being on the trail for 4 days, 4.5 days for myself. Simon, how's your elbow? You had an elbow issue at Cocodona. It looked like you had a big swollen elbow. I read that you were going to get it checked out by the doctor. What's going on with that?
Yeah, I guess my knees were holding out fine, but my elbow, it's a big mystery. I did not fall on it, but it just became very swollen, very painful, very inflamed. Um, Probably from the motion of running with poles a lot. So maybe you're right, Brian. Maybe poles are not the solution to trail running. I had to put them away at some point, but
Yes.
it just became super yeah. But it became super painful, and yeah, I had to go to the doctor just to make sure it's not infected or anything like that. It seems to be all right, but it's kind of funny what hurts in a race like that. It's never what you think would hurt, but it was to the point where even just running without poles, just the bouncing from the inflammation of my elbow would kind of bounce, and that would be painful. That would stretch the skin. So not
Mm.
cool. It was not cool.
Simon, I hope your elbow starts to feel better. I will agree with you though. It's time to put the poles away. I used the poles on day one and then carried them for 3 more days and never touched them again. Um, so I'm ready to put the poles away as well. Hey, you were at 94 hours, roughly 94 hours. Am I correct?
I was 93:45. Thank you very much.
93
But
hours.
yeah,
You were at the 93rd hour, and I was at the 104th hour. But man, I wonder what it was like way up there in the front of the group.
I mean, at the front, the 59, they just got more time to sleep afterwards. So I think it's the easiest route. We took the hard way, the hard route.
I feel like I fully got my money's worth at 104 hours. Right, I spent the most time on the course between our guest and ourselves. Our guest today is Chad Lasater, and he finished in the 82nd hour, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, low 80s. So Chad is a great runner. I've met him running the Grand Slam in whew, 2021 and 2022. So we're both double Grand Slammer of the same years, and he's a very good runner. He's semi-pro. I would qualify him. He's with the Speedland, but really really fast runner. And one of my favorite memory with him was, well, just in general, he's a very chill dude, but he's also super humble. Very 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 humble, and you would not know that he's that good. But we were sitting down after Old Dominion, and at Old Dominion, it's a 28-hour race. It's super old timer there. It's a great kind of historical race, and the morning after the race, everyone sits down for breakfast, and then you have the ceremony where they call your name, starting from the slowest to the fastest, and then giving buckles to sub 24 hours. And I was sitting with Chad and Fanny, and we're chatting, and I asked him, "Hey, like, how did it go for you? I didn't see you all day. Like, how was your race, Chad?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I did all right. I did all right." I was like, "Okay, like, great." Like, I was super. In the meanwhile, I was like, "Well, it went great for me. I did like 23 hours. Like, I have the buckle. Like, it's amazing." I was super excited. I was like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. That's cool." And he was like, "Congratulations." And I was really wondering how fast he did because he was obviously ahead of me, but he was very cryptic about it. And then they start calling name, and then you have like 10th place, 9th place, and still he was not called. It's like, wait, what's going on there? And he did, I think, 17-hour or 18-hour, and he was first place. So it went all right.
Wow.
was he straight up won. And I think there it's always the same guy that is winning. So Chad just came in and just won the thing. So that was kind of, whoa, that was really cool. So yeah, super fast runner.
Well, I didn't know that story about him, but I looked up and snooped around in his ultra sign up. I mean, he's got 59 or 60 results in there, and he has raced all over the world. Besides two grand slams of ultra running, he's got a hard rock, a Tour de Gens. I mean, he's just got the bucket list that we all want. He's got them all done. I mean, like, he has been all over the world. He's raced some races that only a French Canadian can pronounce. So Simon, help me out with those.
Yeah. Like Diagonal des Fous. Yeah. I mean, and he
That
said
one.
Diagonal
That's the
des
one.
I think he said that that's the hardest one he's ever done. And I don't know if it's that race, but I remember him telling a story that sounded a little bit like he tripped, fell down, and broke his finger, I think. And the pain was so bad that he kind of passed out at the aid station when, like, he was saying, like, I'm fine. And it was like, bang. It's like, no, I keep going. So the guy is tough. Like, he's hardcore. So it's great running with him, but you can't keep up. That's not possible.
Well, he was flying. It was nice to meet him the day before. It was nice to see him at the starting line. And I never saw him again until our recording.
I think I saw him only once, and it was at the shitter in the morning. And he was like, hey, that's Simon. I was like, hey, that's Chad. How are you doing? And that was it. Then he was gone. Like, he was all business. And that's always like that with him. Like, you see him fly, and he is gone. My proudest running moment of all of my career, I think, is there's that one race, that one time that I was able to catch up to him around mile 90 and pass him. But to be fair, he was injured, and that was the best race of my life. So all it needs for me to finish ahead of him is he's injured, and I'm having the best race of my life. But a win is a win, so I'm going to take it.
His worst day, your best day, just have to align, you know?
And then, yeah, his worst day and my best day is 5 minutes apart, basically. But I'm faster.
Hey, we do a deep dive in this episode of Cocodona. We go day by day in a breakdown. We give highs and lows. You can get some strategies out of it from the fast guy. I wouldn't take my strategy as a winning strategy by any means, but for sure, Chad is really insightful, really sharing. It's a little long, right? So get prepared, settle in, go for that long run, and here, without further ado, is Chad Lasater. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Buckle Up with Simon and Brian. Chad, thanks for coming on the show at short notice. Right after Cocodona, how are you feeling?
I'm starting to feel a little bit better. So yeah, well, first of all, thanks a lot for having me on. Yeah, it has only been a few days since we finished Cocodona. And, they say with these 200 milers, you get brain fog, and that is real. I've been really suffering from brain fog. Physically, my body feels okay, but mentally, I've really been struggling. And, today's fortunately the first day where I'm really starting to feel human again. So it's a good time to be on the podcast.
Well, welcome. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate you coming on. Simon and I just talked about that brain fog as well in the intro, and yeah, it's real for sure. Chad, I wanted to back up a second, all the way to the beginnings of your ultra endurance career and how you found yourself here at Cocodona. From the looks of it, it's super extensive. So I'm really kind of curious if you could just kind of share with us how you found yourself at Cocodona this year.
Sure. Well, it's a long road. I guess I'll show my age a little bit, but I've been running for over 40 years. So I actually ran my first official race, a 5K, at age 10. So it's been a while. So I ran in junior high school, ran track and cross country, In college, I didn't run competitively, but I always stayed in shape. I was on the crew team in college, so I ran to stay in shape. And I didn't start running marathons until I was out of college. And then I did the usual 1 to 2 marathons a year for several years. Not super fast. I got down to like 2:38. And then just really sort of realized as I got older that I was never going to beat that time. So then I got interested in ultras. I was actually living in Abu Dhabi in the UAE at the time, and I was running with a running group, and there were some people in the running group that had done a few ultras. So I think we were actually passing around the book Born to Run, typical story. So that's kind of how I got interested in it. I did my first ultra in Oman. It was a 70K trail race, and then did Two Oceans Marathon, which is actually a 56-kilometer road race in South Africa. And so those were my first 2 official ultra races. And that was 2013. And that same year, I ran my first 100-miler in the U.S., and that was Mohican 100, my first 100. And then really it spiraled downward from there. I just ran, multiple 100-milers or longer every year after that. Many different ultras, many European ultras, UTMB. I've done UTMF which is now Mount Fuji 100, but it was formerly Ultra Trail Mount Fuji. I did that. Did the Swiss Iron Trail. I ran Tour de Gent in 2018. I've done the Grand Slam of Ultras twice, 2021 and 2022. And that's actually where I met Simon in 2021, where he beat me.
That one time.
And
I beat a guy that is a slow marathon runner at 2:38.
And then really, about Cocodona, I found myself watching the live stream for the past 4 years. And, last year I was watching the live stream, and that's when I really made the decision that I was going to sign up for the race. So I did that. And I have done some fixed time events as well. I've done, just in the past few years, I've done some 24-hour events. I did Desert Solstice in 22, managed to run 152 miles there, and qualified for the U.S. 24-hour team, and then I did the World Championships last year in 23 in Taipei. So that was one of my most interesting experiences, was running 24 hours in Taipei. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, very condensed. But Cocodona was I think it was my 28th finish of 100 miles or longer.
The spectrum. You have quite the spectrum when you think about it, like, doing the 24-hour US team, which is kind of amazing. And I think you were the leader on the team. Am I wrong? Or
yeah, I was the top US finisher. I ended up with 155.8 miles.
Which is crazy. I mean, it's really fast. For people who need to make the math, it's really, really fast to go for that long. And then you do the other extreme. You did race like Diagonale des Fous and super technical race, super traily race. So very, very impressive.
Yeah, and that race was early in my trail career. I was really out of my comfort zone at the time. I think I ran that in 2014. It was like my 3rd or 4th 100-miler, which was just insane because that race is so technical. I was well out of my capability at that point.
Chad, our trajectories are pretty similar. I was a child runner myself, and I think one of the major differences is that you're freaking fast. Well, thanks for the quick recap. It was super short and sweet. I think you're being a bit modest as well. There's a ton of races out there in the Ultra Sign Up. I thought there was 54 races in 11 years on Ultra Sign Up alone that they recognize. So just a slew of events in there, and everything too. Fast and flat and mountainous and long. So yeah, congrats on on a great career so far, and
Yeah,
I'm excited to
thanks.
see what I'm excited to see what you're able to do in the next 10 years as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope I can keep it going for a while. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I like to run all different, all surfaces, all distances. Even though, I live in the South in Sugar Land, Texas, which is just outside of Houston. So it's dead flat. It's not the greatest place to train for mountain races, but I like those events. So, I'm still going to go, even though I may not be the most competitive at those type of events.
I'm curious, was Cocodona your second 200 miler or 200 plus after
It
TDG?
was, yeah. So Tour de Jean was in 2018. So this is, 6 years later. So it's been a while.
Yeah, for anyone curious, actually, Chad is in the Jeff Peltier movie of Tour de Jean, and I saw the movie first before knowing Chad. Then I saw the movie again recently, and I was like, "Hey, that's Chad!" Like, because Jeff was all happy to meet someone who speaks English and was American, and then it's this guy, and this guy turns out to be Chad. So I was like, "Oh, hey, what's up? You're
Yeah,
everywhere." That's pretty cool.
yeah. That Jeff and I, we spent several days together during the race, so we shared a lot of time. I was just running. Of course, he was carrying a camera at the same time and doing all the filming. So he was working a lot harder than I was. So,
Yeah, let's dive into
all
all
right.
three of us just raced Cocodona. I got some stats that I pulled up real quick. We wanted to do a Cocodona debrief with all three of us, and some quick stats were that there was 280 starters this year at Black Canyon City. Robbie and Jessup tied for 200th place as the final finishers in 124 hours and 17 minutes. So they had about 43 minutes before the cutoff to get in. And they looked like they had a great time running across the line together there. So Chad, you were flying, man. Chad was 22nd overall in 82:23. Congrats, Chad. That's amazing. That's screaming
Thanks.
fast. Simon was 57th overall in 93:47 as well. Simon, congrats. And myself, I'm bringing up the rears here at 96th overall in 104 hours and 51 minutes. And roughly it puts us about 11 hours apart. So as the week wore on, our perspectives got a little bit different because we ended up being about 11 hours apart from each other, and Chad and I being 22 hours apart from each other.
I'd be curious to hear just your general perspective, because the funny thing is we assume that 80 something hours is a good time, but I'm curious, what was your impression of the race in general and how did it go kind of at the high level? Did you appreciate the race and did you feel good? Are you happy with your result?
Yeah. So, I did have somewhat of a time goal for the race. My expectation was to finish somewhere between 3 and 4 days. Which that's a very bright, wide window. But, I knew that if things went really, really well, there was a possibility that I could finish, in sort of the low 70-hour range. But given that, I wasn't going to be disappointed, with any finish because, I know in these races, anything can happen. And, there's so many unknowns in 200-mile races that, with any finish, I was going to be happy. And so really my main goal of the race was to just really sort of stay positive, enjoy the course, and, really just appreciate being out there. Before the race, I had been to Arizona a few times. I had been to Phoenix, but really in Phoenix, all I had ever seen was Central High track at the Desert Solstice race. And we had been to Flagstaff and really just passing through Flagstaff to go to the Grand Canyon. So I'd never really seen that bit in between. So I was really excited about, seeing, having that journey on foot to see, a lot of Arizona. So, that was really what I was looking forward to with the race itself. And, I just really wanted to sort of run within myself and execute. So, overall, I was very happy with the finish. I was a little bit slower than I wanted to be, but super happy, super happy.
I'm curious. You've never done Black Canyon 100K?
No,
Huh.
it's always been on my list, and I hope to do it in the next few years. But yeah, I've never done it.
Yeah, I think you would do very well actually. It's
Yeah,
competitive, so I don't know that you would actually finish, for a golden ticket, but I I think you
doubtful.
would blast through that so well. I can see you doing very well.
Yeah, you're watching on the live stream. It looks like a lot of fun. It looks like it's a course that would suit me well.
Yeah, we go down instead of up on that segment, which is
Yeah,
great. So yeah, cool. Well, thanks for the perspective. I mean, it's always interesting because I think for both me and Brian, someone in the 80s, we're thinking, dude, like that guy just must be happy with his race for sure. Like that's probably the dream race. But yeah, it sounds that you probably struggle right in the middle of your goal. So we'll be curious to
yeah.
hear the specific of when was a pain cave and all.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
For sure, but though the same perspective though, Simon. How about yourself? Are you satisfied with your 94-hour finish?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy. I think, I came in wanting to finish was my main goal, wanting to have a good time and not getting injured. So we'll see for injury. There's definitely some elbow issue that I have, which is kind of weird. But it was just a great experience. Like Chad mentioned, we're discovering Arizona, and I've definitely raced apparently more than Chad. I'm surprised you didn't do Black Canyon, but I've definitely seen these areas, and I've done last year Sedona 125, so I actually knew the half end of the course. But you go from basically the desert and big cacti, and then it's rocky, and you go whiskey basin, and it's just really cool that on foot you get to really discover all of the climates that you have in Arizona. And at the same time, they pass you through historical town. You're in Prescott, you're in that cute Jerome town, you go in Sedona, then you're up in Flagstaff. So it's really both, I think, historical in terms of mining kind of industry or whatever that they had in Arizona, and also the landscape that you have. And I think also it's in terms of racing, it's kind of a happening. Like you have all of the big names, but in a more low-key fashion than like, I mean, I'm sure Western State is even more of a happening, but it's probably more of a shit show also. Whereas this is way more low key, and you hang out and you have great runners, but you also have everyone. Like we knew, Brian, you knew like 30, 40 people right in there, and it's the same for me. You just know so many of the runner. You run in the aid station, and like for me, it's like, hey, it's Simon, and then like let's help Simon because we know Simon is solo right now and he's struggling, and like that was really cool. There was I should put the picture on Instagram, but there was at some point there were signed like with like let's go Simon. There was a little Simon kind of mascot, and I was like, hey, that's me. It was just fun. Like in the end, what really got me there was the community. Performance wise, I was able to run until the last day, which that's great. I think I started tired because I had done Fuji UTMF or Mount Fuji 7 days before. So I came in, my first day was basically a day 2 when you think about it. And that was tough. So I was much lower on the first day compared to other runner, but I kind of stayed stable. So I degrade very quickly to I feel like shit. And then I just felt like shit stable, which was one of my big question, if you keep degrading the whole way or you're able to stabilize. And by being patient and taking care of myself, I think I was able to stabilize and go to a strong finish, really. So I'm pretty happy with that. How about you,
Awesome.
Ryan?
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it. I came in with the same ideas. I had my own goal times in mind. I wanted to enjoy the experience. I wanted to share in the community. I was actually really excited to disconnect too. I was really excited to unplug the computer and unplug the phones, and I ran a good section of it unsupported or just with a crew, no pacer or anything. So I did run quite a bit of it solo on the trail itself, which was actually really enjoyable for me. So I didn't hit the goal. I was a little bit off or a little bit over the goal that I was looking for, but otherwise Everything else was good. We'll talk about it in depth a little bit more here coming up, but I struggled in the beginning, and I was able to pull it together and finish it fairly strong. So that was also encouraging. Like I got back on the bike and kept on riding, as opposed to calling it a day and hanging the bike up. So
I did the opposite in terms of disconnecting. When I had service, sometimes I would jump on the live stream and talk with people. I just felt it was so funny to go there and ask, how are Brian's knee? And like things like that. So it was just really fun to be able to, to connect with people because, yeah, you did unsupported on some segment, but like I was really solo, like no crew, no nothing. And that turned out to be like, it's not great. It's really the little things like, well, you won't brush your teeth for a long time because that was in your first drop bag and it's game over. It just really sucks, but that's part of the game.
Well, great. That was a great recaps. I appreciate you guys sharing them. Let's get into like day one. It is Monday morning and we take off out of Black Canyon City and we have some climbing to do, Chad. How did that day go for you?
Yeah, it was sort of a strange start. Everyone went off really fast, and that took me a bit by surprise. It shouldn't be because, there's always people going off hot at the start. I tried to run within myself and take it fairly easy. I knew it was going to get hot. We sort of made it to Cottonwood, the first aid station. And, I left with I think I had 2.5 liters of water full. So we got to Cottonwood. I wanted to get there as, not super fast, but I didn't want to be in the back because I knew once we got to the first aid station, everyone was going to be trying to fill up with water. I did run a little bit faster to Cottonwood. To fill up all of my bottles. And once we got there, I filled up, I think I had 5 liters of water in total, which was actually ended up being plenty. I was a little bit worried because I heard people talking about, carrying 7 liters of water, and I thought I wasn't going to have enough. But, as it turned out, the day was not as hot as what we had expected, which was great. I really focused on trying to keep myself hydrated, keep fueled, not get sunburned. And, really, I think the first part of day one for me was just all about self-preservation. I didn't want to do anything stupid in that first section that would jeopardize, the later parts of the race. So, that really went well for me. I was able to eat. I drank plenty. I filled up at every the 2 water stops before we got to Lane Mountain. For me, the first section was great. I was running with some other guys, chatting, really just sort of enjoying the day. And it was really beautiful. Everyone talked about the section being super hard, but I really enjoyed going through the desert and seeing all the different types of cactuses. It was really, there was a lot more beauty in the desert, that section, than what I was expecting. So that was a really fun section for me. I don't know, but just because I was expecting it to be terribly hard, it was a little bit easier than I was expecting, maybe because of the temperature, but yeah, it was a good start to the race for me.
And how far did you make it on day one? So obviously you went through Lane and then you came down into Crown King, maybe?
Yeah. So passed through Lane and then saw my crew. I did have a crew. I had, 1 dedicated crew person, and then I had, 2 pacers, to start with. So I met them at Crown King, had a burger, sort of sat down, collected myself. I was feeling great, and then really had a fairly quick stop. I think I only stopped at Crown King for about 10 minutes, and then carried on. And then it went fine for a while. And then I started having some low points in day one. I think it was after it got dark, around Camp Kippa was really the first time where I started struggling a bit. just, I was having a little bit of nausea. I mean, I was still eating, but I just wasn't feeling great. And then, leaving, I managed to get out of Camp Kippa, and that's just a road section. You get to this road section before you get to, I think it's Camp Wamatuchik, I think. But I remember in the course description, they warn you of a sharp right turn off of Senator Highway, to be very careful not to miss that. And, on that Senator Highway, there were a lot of cars when I was going through there, and they were kicking up dust. And so it was making the vision really difficult. And so I was cruising down Senator Highway and missed the turn. And I continued on for about another mile until I came up on another runner. So I thought, oh, well, I must be doing fine. But he was stopped, and he asked me if we had missed the turn. So we both looked at our maps and realized we were way off course. So had to turn around, and at that point had to go uphill back to the turn. So that was 2 bonus miles that I got, early on day one. Or I guess it was late on day one, but early on in the race. Sure. So then we made it to Camp Wamatuchik and had some food there. And then the next stop was Whiskey Row. And for me, Whiskey Row was going to be an optional sleep. I was going to sleep if I really felt like I needed it. And if I felt okay, I was going to carry on. But I made the decision to go ahead and sleep there just because, I felt like I kind of needed a reset. So, I ate, had some pizza, and then I slept for about 30 minutes. And then from there, I picked up my first pacer. And from that point on, I had a pacer with me the whole time, which was great. So I guess my day one concluded whenever I got to the Granite Dells. Because the Granite Dells is when that was my first sunrise. And that was a beautiful section of the course as well, the Granite Dells. It was crap to run through. I did not enjoy all that rock hopping, and it was confusing, and I was getting really frustrated. But it was beautiful. I can't imagine going through there at night. We went through there just at sunrise, and it was really the perfect time. So that was kind of day one for me. So it was like 80 plus miles. So.
Yeah, you went a little further than we did, I think.
How about your day one, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, in comparison or how I felt about it?
Yes.
So actually, it didn't go terrible, but even from the start for me, so when there's a start like that, I think there's some people that like to, I don't know how to be nice, but they like to film and they like to be in the front when they film, even if they're not going to finish top 10. And I don't think that's super considerate of other people. I think that's, anyway. So I definitely don't do that. What I do usually is I try to film people passing by and then I jump in, which means that I do the opposite. I really go at the back of the pack and I'm really not where I should be. Like if it's self-seated, I should be way ahead of that. So I got way stuck in the conga line very deep, like in the last 10% of runners. And it's single track for a while. I also didn't think it would be single track for a while because when we did the shakeout run, there was a dirt road. But that's not what we do. We go single track. So I was stuck there, barely walking at kind of a normal pace. And like I knew everyone was kind of going ahead. But that's life. I was thinking, it's 250 mile. You don't have to stress too much about it. But at the same time, you're pumped up and you want to go. So that was kind of frustrating a little bit. And it stayed like that conga line for me up until the first 8 station where you filled your water. Also had 5 liters. But already by then, I was feeling my Achilles were getting pretty sore already, and I knew that coming uphill would be the worst, and like that first day was not great for that. So that was really painful, but I was able to do the big climb kind of in one go. That's also, I met Fanny, our friend, during that segment, so we got to share quite a lot of miles, which was great. And I was finally kind of catching up to people now that it was not a single track and just kind of cruising and not feeling that bad. The heat was not so bad. I also didn't drink all of my 5 liter. In fact, I don't know if it was like that for front of the pack runner like you, Chad, but for us, the second water station, we weren't allowed to take a full liter. We were allowed only
Yeah.
half a liter, which for me was like, okay, whatever. Like I knew by then I would be fine because it's pretty late. But a little bit later, actually, I had to share. Well, I didn't have to, but I shared water with another runner who was kind of empty. So I hope she did well. I actually forgot to check if she finished, but I gave her
She
some
finished.
water a little bit just so she could keep going. And yeah, and then we made it to Crown King, or the first one, and then Crown King. And yeah, I was getting sleepy already by then. It was still daytime, but I was already kind of dozing off a little bit. And I was thinking, I want to reach, that was my goal, was to reach Whiskey Row before the morning so I could sleep there and wake up in the morning. But I absolutely miserably failed at that. The night was super cold. And that's kind of the little things that I knew would be a problem. So I didn't have a drop bag until Whiskey Row. And I was, my shirt was all sweaty, and that was just not great for the night. So as soon as I would stop at an aid station, I would just start shaking. But at the same time, I was tired, so I need to stop. And like my hip flexor were tight, and it was just not a great night for me. Made it all the way to Camp Chukuchuku. Or
Wamatulich.
whatever, Brian. Yeah, exactly right. That's
Camp
exactly
W.
what I said.
Camp
Yeah.
W.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I said with the French accent, really, when you think about it. But I went there, and then I decided, I'm just gonna sleep. So I slept there. They gave me a blanket, but the building there was super cold, so I was able to sleep a little bit. But then eventually, I was like, I'd better go. So that was my first night. Then made it all the way to Whiskey Row. The morning came in between, so that's kind of where I made it before Whiskey Row. Super tired, and I really thinking, man, this is gonna be rough. Like I would expect to be able to do 100-mile without kind of, not without breaking a sweat, but kind of reaching that without going too much in the pain cave, because I'm taking more of my time at aid station. I'm not running as much, but it was not like that. And I kept thinking, wow, like there's 200 miles to go right now, and this, I don't know if I can do it. So self-doubt was kind of creeping in a little bit, but kept going. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, my day one obviously was really similar to your guys's. I had the same ideas and thoughts as Chad, although I wasn't able to execute them. I did run just a slight tad faster, not out of a comfort zone, but just with a little more importance. I was also afraid of the water drop issue at that first aid station at Cottonwood. So I got there quickly enough to make sure I got all my water. I did fill up with 5 liters total from there on, but I think I only carried a liter there. So I was really kind of concerned that I wasn't going to get enough water. But it all worked out. I think Simon passed me right at that aid station, or within a couple feet of it, if I'm not
Did
mistaken. And I think that's the last time I saw
I
Simon.
passed you when we were climbing, right?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, I broke out my trekking poles and started climbing. And we've had this conversation before, Chad. It was Simon and I, that I'm not a big trekking pole fan, but I was working on them and I was bringing them, and I thought day one would be a great day for them. Obviously, with 10,000 feet of climbing and 27 miles or whatever the stats were. But real quickly, I started to get like tennis elbow. Like I started to get tendonitis in my elbow from pulling so hard on my trekking poles. Apparently, I'm a runner and shouldn't use my upper body for anything besides feeding myself. But I did struggle up the climb. I know it was cooler than it was expected, but being from Colorado and not being able to acclimate to any sort of heat, I did kind of suffer in the heat there. I did the half-liter water issue was not an issue for me. I did drink most of my water when I got, but I was rationing it, counting the miles and rationing in my head how much I need to drink, so I could be empty when I got to the top of Lane Mountain. It was great to see the guys from Ultraspire at the top of Lane Mountain. It was Zach and Bryce were up there, so it was really cool to see those guys. They were doing a cooling station with sponges and buckets of cold ice water. And I thought, for the most part, I thought it was a pretty normal day, and I put my poles away and started to run downhill, and I just was not firing. I could not put it together. I was getting passed by more people than were passing me, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but I really expected just to kind of stay in my spot in the race at that point, just kind of stay neutral, a person passes me and I pass a person, but this was quite a bit more people passing me than I was passing, and so I could quickly see myself starting to head to the back, and I could not figure out why I was cramping too. I did use my electrolytes. I did drink all my fluids, but I was still cramping, and it wasn't like leg cramps. It was like full body cramps. My shoulders were sore. My arms were sore. My legs were obviously sore, but I had like just a full body cramp all around. It didn't feel great at all. I too was trying to make it to Whiskey Row before morning, but in short order, I could barely stagger to Camp Kippa. And actually 2 miles from Camp Kippa, I had to lay down and take a 20-minute power nap. Try to continue on. I was not moving efficiently. I was staggering all on that dirt road from left to right, tripping over myself. I too thought it was going to be much warmer, or a little warmer up there, because it was so close to the desert. So I didn't have pants, but I did have all the required gear for the uppers. So I had all my required night gear on, and my legs exposed, and slept on the ground for 25 minutes. I woke up shivering, and that forced me to run into Camp Kippa, where I regrouped, reset, ate a bunch of food, got warm, and moved on to Camp W, and all the way to eventually Whiskey Row. But Whiskey Row for me was right around 11 a.m. So the sun had been up for a few hours by then. So I was already in the first few hours of day 2, and I just was not feeling great. Quite honestly, I did sleep 30 minutes at Whiskey Row. I slept in the common area. I slept with my compression boots on, and that actually kind of helped. I felt pretty fresh when I got out of Whiskey Row and started to run to the Dells. So Chad, you wound up on day 2, first sunrise, coming into the Dells, and man, that place was pretty special. I'd never been there. I'd never been anywhere on the Cocodona course, but if I were to take my family back to anywhere on that course, I would go to the Granite Dells, because that was a pretty cool place, pretty special place. So you navigate through the Dells, and what else went on for you for day 2?
Yeah, well, it took forever to get through the Dells for one thing. They just kept going and going and going, and I was wondering if we were ever going to get out of there, but we finally did. And the sleep that I had at Whiskey Row really did help, and I felt a lot better on day 2, which was encouraging. So really, day 2, it started off being a much easier day because, I had a pacer with me. I felt better physically. So we were just sort of plugging along, made it to the first aid station, Iron King. And I specifically remember that aid station because I was super hungry when we got there. And they had this mashed potato bar with these vegan sloppy joe topping, which was amazing. So I gorged myself there, and was able to run out of there feeling pretty good. And then one of the worst sections of the course for me was just going into Fane Ranch and then going out of Fane Ranch. They say that's sort of a crappy section, just because you're basically just running through a field. And yeah, it was super annoying for me, going through that section.
Yeah, there's cacti in there. I don't know if you hit any, but for me, like I hit one with my feet, not thinking there would be one, and like that sting as hell. That was not fun.
Yeah.
Like it's not just like a cow field where you might step in poop, which is not great, but like that was not good.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in that field that you just have to be careful for. With that high grass, it's hard to see what you're stepping on. Yeah. It reminded me of running through the field at Leadville, actually, without the massive holes. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Did you see the cows? Did they attack you?
Didn't have any problem with the cows, but yeah, we saw the cows. So.
Yeah. I decided to not go directly at them and kind of go around. Because they said they would like come to you, but they're nice. I was like, yeah, I don't want to test that. It's like with dogs. They always say like, no, the dog is nice. It doesn't bite until it bites. And it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm not testing that today.
Yeah.
That segment
so
sucked.
Let's see. So moving on that was sort of midday for me. And And once we got to Fain Ranch, that's where I picked up my second pacer. So I traded off pacers at Fain Ranch. And my second pacer, which was Jeff Urbanski, really good guy. So he got me up over Mingus. And really, I'd heard so many things about, Mingus, going down Mingus into Jerome and then out of Jerome being one of the hardest sections of the course. I was really expecting it to be horrible, and which it wasn't great. I didn't really enjoy the descent off of Mingus, but it wasn't terrible either. I think just because I was expecting it to be horrible. It wasn't
Was it
super
daylight
runnable,
for you?
but it was daylight. So I can imagine being at night, it would be a lot more challenging. But yeah, it was daylight. And we made it into Jerome. That was a nice break for me because there's a lot of road in that section. So I know a lot of people hate that section because of the road, but I actually really enjoyed it because could just kind of turn off and let the legs go. So that was a nice mental break for me getting into Jerome. And once we were in Jerome, I was able to fuel up again and was feeling generally okay. And then, the goal from there was just to get to Dead Horse, and made it into Dead Horse Ranch. And it was pretty late at that point. And, I made the decision not to sleep there, just to press on again. So I went through another night and, made it to Sedona, and it was sunrise at Sedona. So that was sort of the end of my complete day 2 there.
48
So
hours.
the leading up to Sedona, it was already dark, right? So when was nightfall for you? Around Dead Horse?
Yeah, I was in Dead Horse. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And what
actually
about,
probably really good, because for me at least that segment was really the hottest and the most it really hit me, and people around. I think I was doing well in the heat, but that's where people were struggling. Coming in Sedona, people looked like, absolute shit. So yeah. And were you mostly running at that point still?
Yeah, I was still running quite a bit.
Nice.
I was trying to run, all the downs and the flats and then hike the uphills. And I was able to maintain that for the most part.
Impressive.
Just staying steady, really.
And Chad, that morning you left. You get through the dells and you hit what's referred to as the Fain Ranch bullshit on both ends of it.
Yeah.
So that's actually it was probably still pretty early, fairly early morning. But did it get hot, or was it not hot yet?
Yeah, it started to get really warm, especially once I got to Fain Ranch, the aid station. It was super hot, and leaving Fain Ranch, I had to put on all my full sun gear again and get ready for the heat.
I think I got the worst of both of you guys. That's my theory. But when I think about when it was nighttime and when it was daytime, because you guys are almost like a full cycle difference. So I feel like, when it was night, maybe for Chad, it was night for Brian, but like the day after. But for me, it was the opposite. And yeah, like the segment that we're down in the valley all the time for me was the middle of the fucking day. And you go over the mountain and then it's nighttime again, and now you're freezing your ass. It was every time like that. And it was, I would climb with the sunset, and as soon as I reach the summit, it's nighttime, but I'm all sweaty, and it was not cool. So maybe next time I'll go faster or slower. I'll think about what's the best way to solve that problem, but not my strategy for sure.
So Simon, how far did you get on day 2?
So I started at going towards Whiskey Row, right? And actually I met Westplate for the last time at Whiskey Row. So he had skipped the night, no sleeping. He wanted to sleep at Whiskey Row. So I was we were at the same place physically, but I already had my night. So there was maybe a 1 or 2 hours difference. I kind of head out. That's also the last time I saw Thomas. I gave him my toothbrush and I said, if you see me again, give it to me, please. And it never happened, but that's life. But it was also there that I had the first person randomly helping me that I didn't expect. So it was Cameron. He just showed up at the aid station and was like, "Hey, like I got you a burrito. Like I know you're racing solo, so like I want to support." I was like, "Oh, like thank you. Like that was really good." So kind of heading out with the big burrito, and I hate the whole thing, and that was kind of perfect actually. So the trail community kind of stepping up was really cool, and that's the first time I saw it very very clearly. And yeah, I mean, the day was starting. You run across Prescott. It was already getting a little toasty. You do the Dale. It was absolutely gorgeous. But same as Chad, I was at some point I was like, oh man, I'm really like I don't want to do this right now. I would love it in any other circumstance, but not right now. And then someone listened to my prayer and decide to put these segments that are even worse, that are the exact opposite. Like I was always thinking it would be so good to be able to run, and then I was like, sure, I'll give you a field. You can run. Just, good luck not stepping in anything. I was like, oh, okay. You know what? Let's go back to the Dale. Like that was okay. But yeah, and then I was struggling a little bit. I also started having blister around that time. And I just didn't have spare socks until I think it was Sedona was my next time I could do a change of socks. So it was definitely a little bit of bad care or bad planning from my part. I should have had more socks along the course. But yeah, getting blisters a little bit. Then I got to Phantom Wrench, finally getting there. And I was still kind of mid shuffling, mid walking, but not necessarily falling asleep. So I was still kind of rolling at that point. And that's around Phantom Wrench. I noticed kind of my elbow being a little painful. Nothing too bad, but yeah, I think it's bursitis in the end. Like we'll never really know. But it was starting, and I was feeling a little bit like Brian. Like maybe it's the pull, but it was maybe a fall that I had, or it was maybe me laying down somewhere and just getting bitten by something. So you just don't know what happened, but it got like it got inflamed, visibly inflamed, like the size of maybe not a golf ball, but almost a golf ball, maybe a half golf ball, and it was super painful. When I was running, even without poles, the kind of extra fluid was bouncing and kind of stretching my skin, so it was kind of painful actually. But yeah, so I got it checked at Mingus. The climb was not so bad. I did, like I said, around sunset. But when I got up there, I was starting to get cold, and I decided to take care of myself and sleep a little bit. I think I was already starting to see that it's not, unless you want to win, of course, or like do a very good time, it's not so much about moving fast. It's more about being able to keep going. And there's so much to go that taking 1 hour to sleep right now sounds like a lot of time, but I'd rather do that and not feel like shit. And I also knew that the downhill would be technical at night. So I wanted to be kind of fresh, and like a fall, like a bad fall would ruin my race. Whereas taking an hour to sleep, I'm not gonna get pulled off the course from cutoff by 1 hour at this point. Like I knew I was way ahead of that. So took 1 hour to sleep. It felt pretty good actually. I was lucky because that one has like quite a lot of rooms where you can sleep, and it's a lot of bunks, and people talk and people are loud. So having a crew also is great if you have like a van that you can sleep, by the way, number one. But number two is you find a room that all of the bed, there were no mattress except for one. And it happened a few times that like people would come in and like they slam the door and like they're talking super loud to their pacer. And it's like, I was like, oh my God. And then they start putting their stuff down on the bed. And it was like, oh, there's no mattress. And I was like, yeah, there's no mattress. Get the fuck out. But at least I could sleep like by myself. They wouldn't be talking all the time. So I was like, yeah, that's kind of a good plan. So yeah, that felt pretty good. I agree with Chad though. Like it was not terrible running that downhill. You just had to watch your footing. And I was not going super fast, but I was feeling pretty good. Made it all the way to Jerome. And one of my goals coming in, I had two time goals, or two goals that were related to time. One was to get to Jerome before the 125 race would start, because I was really hoping that people that do the 125 would start from behind me and they would catch up to me, which would give me company and kind of energy to see someone fly by you, maybe not, but someone who's just going a little faster. Sometimes you're thinking, I can do this. Like I can latch to this person and just keep going a little bit and talking with that person. So I was able to do it, but barely. I think by
3 or 4 hours maybe. So middle of the night in Jerome. Went all the way to Phantom Ranch, and that was not Phantom Ranch. What's the aid station after Jerome?
Dead Horse.
Dead Horse, yeah. So I was able to go to Dead Horse around sunrise. So that was my second day. And the lowest point, yeah, I should really say that the lowest point was definitely Mingus. Like at the aid station, when I had my elbow, when I was feeling Achilles pain, and really thinking, I think I'm getting injured right now, and I'm doing this for fun. Like I don't want to ruin my whole running season. So asking myself, is it like, should I be going right now, and making the decision like, okay, like if I quit, I'm quitting right now. I know I can continue, and I'm pretty sure I can finish, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be injured from that. But I decide right now, like if I keep going to the next aid station, then I'm finishing this. And if I want to quit, I should quit right now. And I was not really considering quitting, but more being concerned about kind of my health a little bit. I decided to go, obviously, and I think it was a good decision. But yeah, that was definitely my lowest point in terms of decision making. Not in terms of pain or being sleepy. I was definitely sleepy, but more in terms of let's be real here. Like, are we committing to this or not? And yeah, I decided to commit to it.
Totally. I had the same exact thought process, Simon, on my day two. My day two obviously had already been started by the time I got to Whiskey Row at 11 a.m. I stayed there for an hour and a half with 30 minutes of sleep, food, redoing my feet, and took off towards the Granite Dells. I hit them late, like 2:30, after all the pavement to get there. And I realized I was like the only person in there, and I thought everyone else made a really good decision not to hit the Dells in the heat of the day, except for myself. And I just got smoked in there. And it is these sandstone lumps with painted dots, and you're standing at one dot trying to find the next one. And it is just this maze of rocks and dots, and it goes on, and you cross across the other side, and I just assumed we would be exiting, but no, we came back down and recrossed back to the side we were just on, and I just could not figure out which direction we were going and why we were doing this. And so I struggled through the Dells, and we got out, and when there was runnable sections, I still was not able to get any rhythm going. And gosh, day two, all the way up to mile 90 and 36 hours in at 5 o'clock, it took me to get to Iron King, which is a small little station, just a double tent with the potato bar that Chad just mentioned. And I had a talk with Thomas, who was my pacer, and I said, hey, I'm gonna give this one more shot. I'm gonna try this next 5.5 mile section. But if it's not coming together, it might be time for us to head back to Colorado. So I was really contemplating it. But there's something that I took from lessons learned a couple years ago. Candace Burt from Destination Trails, she was doing a talk to us one time at a campfire, going across the Cocopelli Trail, and her last words of advice were, before you DNF any race, you should eat just a ton of food, and you should lay down and take a rest, and close your eyes, right? And so, of course, at 250 miles, I did just that. I had 2 bowls of sloppy joes and potatoes as well. I got in the back of my truck. I laid down, and I told Thomas not to wake me up. I just wanted to wake up naturally. So I slept for an hour and 15 minutes. I put all my stuff back on. I hesitantly got out of the car. I didn't miraculously feel better. It wasn't night and day. But I got out of the car, and I started shuffling, and that shuffle turned into a jog. And it was obviously nighttime now because I got there at 5 o'clock. So it's probably looking at 7:30, 8 o'clock, just turning on the headlamps. And I'm in that Bain Ranch bullshit on both ends of it. But actually I was in good spirits, and I wasn't cramping, and I was able to run when it was runnable. Of course, there were some navigation issues going across the field. I just decided to follow the GPX file track alone and just follow the dot on my phone, as opposed to trying to find these flags in the middle of nowhere that have been all run down. There was people all over this field, scattered all over. There was no telling which direction was the right direction. And so I just got to Fain Ranch by following my map and basically holding my phone in front of me and just running on the GPX file trail through Fain Ranch pretty quickly. And I didn't want to stop momentum because I was feeling better. When we got along the highway from Fain Ranch going to Mingus, that highway section, I was able to get in some groove. That trail's slightly better than the previous section. It's a little single tracky and it shoulders the highway. It still needs some navigation, but otherwise I was running. I was actually running well. I climbed Mingus really well. I ate a ton of food up there, and I continued on, and that was basically my day 2. I left there before the sun came up, but I didn't make it to Jerome before sunrise. So in between is when my day 2 ended. But I was feeling like garbage the first 90 miles, and this is the first time in the race where I actually started to find rhythm and start running some of these sections. Because before that, the previous 90 miles, people were just walking through me. They were literally dropping me, having conversations, and I was telling them, I'm sorry I can't talk with you because I actually can't keep up. I just cannot do it for whatever reason. So somehow I shook it again with the sleep and the food theory as the last ditch resort. But I moved on, and I was happy for it. So I was in better spirits and moving by the morning of day 2, or the third morning after 48 hours of moving forward. So I did turn it around that night, and I was happy. I didn't want to go home, but I couldn't envision doing 160 miles in the condition that the first 90 miles went. I think you even mentioned it as well, Simon, that you were a bit concerned about me, more than just my knees. You were a bit concerned about my ability to move forward because I wasn't looking so hot.
Yeah, I mean, when I was checking, I was not disconnected, and I would check on the live stream, but also I would check on the app, and like sometimes I would see Brian not moving at all, and I was like, this is not good. Like I hope he's gonna bounce back, which he did eventually to some extent, but like you just know that someone is not moving and feeling great. Like that if someone is not moving, it's because first they're not moving, which isn't great, but also they're feeling like total like shit. Which is like, man, like it's not your day, and like that feels bad. So yeah.
Chad, how about your day 3? You're almost home, man. Jeez, Louise.
Yeah, well, getting there. Day 3 was definitely a rough one. So it started out, with sunrise starting to come into Sedona, which was amazing. Again, I hit that at the perfect time. There was I'd never been through Sedona. So, coming through there at sunrise was just stunning. And I did take time to soak it in as well. And, I still had legs in that section, and those trails were super fun. They're actually, some really nice single track that you can actually run. I wasn't running fast, but we were moving steady. And, I really enjoyed that section coming into Sedona. I was also looking forward to sleep because, until then I had only slept for 30 minutes, and, Sedona was one of those places where I was planning to sleep, no matter what time it was. So we got there and it was early morning. Again, I ate a bean burger and went into the room where they had all the cots and slept for 30 minutes. And when I slept at Whiskey Row, I had a hard time going to sleep, but at Sedona, I was lights out right whenever I hit the pillow. So I slept a pretty good 30 minutes and popped right up and ate a little bit more, and then I was ready to go. So left Sedona, and then again it started getting really hot. It was sort of late morning by that time, from there you go up Schnebly Hill. After you get through more trails of Sedona, then you start that hill up Schnebly, and that was where I first started, or I guess that was the second time where I really started to struggle a little bit. it was super hot. I was getting tired. And the other thing is the altitude, I could really start to feel it. I live in Houston, which is 20-foot elevation. And, I think Schnebly is, I don't know, it gets up close to 8,000 feet, I believe, 7,000 to 8,000. But I was really feeling it going up that mountain. So from there, we sort of made our way from Schnebly to Munns, running off and on, still not feeling great. But made it to Munns okay, ate some more. I was through that section. I started to have some foot problems as well. I was having blisters, which I usually never get blisters. And I think it was just, I was changing my socks. Throughout the race, I went through, I think, 6 pairs of socks. So, I was changing my socks fairly frequently, cleaning my feet, but I was still getting blisters. So that was, it started to be more of a struggle at that point. But then,
quick question, Chad.
Yeah.
I guess it's not the right time to ask when you have blisters, but what shoes were you using? And did you change them throughout the course, or you use one pair?
So I was using Speedlands. I used the GS PGH and the GS PDX, which are essentially the same shoe, just different colorway. And the shoes work great. I didn't really have any issues with. I don't think it was the shoes. I think it was just I didn't pre-tape or anything. I mean, I used lube on my feet, and I wore toe socks. But I think it was just the constant, friction and heat that caused the blisters. I mean, I had blisters on my heels, and then I had the worst one. I had one under the pad of my foot, which was under a callus, and it ended up rupturing. And so that was a little bit painful for the last day and a half.
Bit.
Yeah,
I bet.
So,
ouch.
But from between Munns and Kelly Canyon, that was one of the places where I struggled the most. It's just I think halfway to Kelly Canyon, it just ends up you're on this road. It's just kind of a dirt road, and it was dark. And I was running with my pacer, and we're running along, and then all of a sudden I'm not beside him. I'm basically falling asleep on the trail, standing up. And so we managed to get to Kelly Canyon. It was pretty slow going, getting there, but we got there. My next planned sleep was going to be the next aid station at Fort Tuthill. But I had to sleep. So Kelly Canyon was cold as hell. Their sleep accommodations were 2 tents, and they were just, on bare ground, and they had just a blanket in each one. So I just curled up on the ground with my blanket in the tent and slept for 30 minutes, and felt a little bit refreshed. I just still didn't feel great, but I ate some soup, and we made our way out of Kelly Canyon. And then, I felt a little bit better, and we managed to get to Fort Tuthill okay. And at that point, I went down for an hour sleep. So that was, I guess we can call that the end of my day 3.
I'm curious, did you sleep on the trail, or whenever you were sleeping or stopping was that aid station?
I never slept on the trail officially.
Officially.
I did
sleepwalking doesn't count.
How about unofficially?
Yeah, I think unofficially standing up, sleeping, I did some of that, but I never laid down. So.
Yeah. It's funny because I agree with you. Somehow, like the road that we get up there, I mean, for me, it's not necessarily between Munns and Kelly, although that has happened the year before. But just as soon as you're out of the Sedona Canyon or Valley and you're up on these dirt road, like, I don't know if it's altitude for me, but both year I was there. And the first year I shouldn't have been tired, but I got so sleepy. And maybe it's just it's just so monotonous to be on these roads. Maybe it's the altitude, maybe it's the cold, but it's something for me just kind of like my brain just shuts down totally. And I managed to, it's a dirt road, it's easy to not lose it, but I managed to sleep enough that at some point I start walking in the ditch, because I guess my brain sees that as being a trail as opposed to the road. Like I really don't know, and then like just wake up in shock and I was like, oh, let's get back on the road. And I had quite a few cycles with that, so I'm glad to know I'm not the only one.
I think in the runner description, whenever they give the course description, they actually warn you about that area, that people have found themselves in the ditch on that road. So I don't know what it is about that road, but you're right. I think it's just monotonous and just kind of lulls you to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. And after 3 days, it kind of makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
Simon, what about your day 3? How did your day 3 go?
Yeah, I can make it brief. Day 3 was actually fine. I was able to jog, walk a lot, but I would definitely start having these spells of like, I need to sleep right here, right now. Like this is not happening. So I would sit down on a rock, and sometimes just a 5 minute or 10 minutes where I'm not laying down really and just kind of closing my eyes, and I would lapse, open my eyes, and then I would keep going. But that's also where I think there's a trail etiquette in a 200 that is different than a normal trail etiquette, which is if you see someone laying down on the trail in any normal circumstance, you should ask if they're all right. Like you should check if they're okay. But in a 200 miler, that person is most definitely just trying to sleep, and you talking to them is not helpful. And because a lot of the one, and intention is really good, so I don't want to blame anyone. I just want to put it out there. I think you're supposed to not talk with people that are just laying on the side of the trail. If they have an issue, they will tell you. They will say, hey, I need water, or I'm not feeling good. But if they're not saying anything, they're trying to sleep right now. And I had some people, like, I think it's okay that someone would just say, hey, you're all right. And it's like, yeah, I'm just trying to sleep. And then they just kind of zip it. But I had like a few people, usually it's pacers, and you tell them, yeah, I'm fine, I'm just trying to sleep. Of course, I'm not saying it with such a nice kind of voice. I probably mumbled it a little bit, like, I'm okay, I just need to sleep. But then they would say, are you sure you're okay? I was like, yeah, I just want to sleep right now. I was like, no, but if you need anything, we're here for you. I was like, no, I'm good. I need to sleep. And they would just keep pestering me. I was like, stop it. And then you just, okay, like I'm going now. Which was not great, because I really need kind of my brain to reset sometimes. It really felt like that. Like I sit down, reset my brain. And that has happened a lot around Sedona, coming up to the aid station. Then at the aid station, I took a very long break, I think an hour and a half, because the segment was super hot. That's when I passed Andrew Glaze. He didn't look so great, honestly. He said he was fine, but he was like, I think he was really struggling. So I decided to take care of myself at Sedona, sleep, eat, reset. It worked pretty well. As soon as I was out of the aid station, I was running super fast, so it was time well invested. Then did the climb. I think the sunset was probably at the beginning of the climb, more or less. And the climb is, it's relentless, but it's not so bad. I think you just have to keep grinding, really. A lot of people say it's the worst, but I think the worst is Eldon. So I just kept going, and as soon as I was up on the plateau, I started being cold again. I put all of my layers, and at Moon and the aid station before that, I needed to sleep so badly. It was just so bad. Like at some point I was going maybe, and that was the lowest point of the race for me, from sleepiness. I would go like a mile, and then I would start sleepwalking and like be in the ditch and saying, okay, like I need to sit down on a rock, close my eyes 5 minutes, then I go. But it was also cold, so like I couldn't like straight up lay down and sleep for 10-20 minutes. Like that was not an option. So I was just going through these cycles, and what was like maybe a 6 mile or 7 mile segment turned into like an absolute nightmare that it took forever to make it to the next aid station. But I did it all the way to, I think by the time I was at Kelly, I think it was morning already. But I really felt by then like I kind of passed the biggest hurdle. Like it felt like the challenge was in the past, and now it was just about wrapping it up. So I felt like pretty strong, and I like time wise I was moving well, despite like falling asleep every mile. it felt bad, but speed-wise, I think I was still at the average pace that I maintained probably the whole race. So it wasn't like a disaster that everyone was passing me, but it did not feel good. Like I have some clips that I filmed where I'm just mumbling, and that was something I was wondering filming a race like that. I was really wondering when I'm doing narration for the film if I would have like this nice story that I'm telling with a very eloquent voice, or I would be and I mean it's in between really. So we'll see how the movie comes out, but yeah, so that was the lowest point for me that night, but kind of made it without never like the quitting part was, well, it was not quitting, but the asking myself if I should continue was the second night, like with injury. Third night was just, it didn't feel good, but I knew I just needed to push a little bit. So yeah. How about you, Brian?
My day 3 was actually getting better and better. I was still pretty far back. I was just between Mingus and Jerome, but I went through Jerome in the morning, daylight hours, maybe even later than that, quite honestly, because I missed the start by quite a bit. But I didn't. I made a quick stop there, ate some food and moved on. I didn't do anything drastic there. I didn't sleep. Moved on through Jerome, went to Dead Horse. I took a shower. That's the state park, right? I believe. That's like the campground one. Yeah, I took a shower there and felt like a new person. I brushed my teeth, Simon. So I took a shower at Dead Horse Ranch State Park. I felt really good there. I decided to push on to Deer Pass. And I was just moving. I actually was running. I was catching people. And I was still by myself, so it was kind of nice to be able to run at my own pace. It just kind of dictate when I want to run and when I don't want to run. I was running some of the ups, like some of the rollers, I could tell, so I was going to momentum. It was a really great day, quite honestly. I don't know where I wound up. Oh, I came into Sedona late that night. I too, Chad, wanted to see Sedona really bad. I've never been to Sedona. And then now I've only been there once, and all I saw of it was from midnight till about 6 a.m. So I didn't see any of it besides what my headlight saw. I did sleep in Sedona for 30 minutes in that same bunkhouse, or that same room with all the cots in it. I think that was about it. It was a pretty great day on my end. I was bouncing back and feeling much better. I was eating a ton and doing well. So you're at Fort Tuthill, Chad, and gosh, you're just a rock's throw away, even though we have to go the long way around to get there.
Yeah, almost home at that point. So yeah, I had slept an hour at Fort Tuthill, and actually picked up a third pacer. So there was a friend who was there to pace another runner who actually ended up dropping. So he jumped in with me and paced me for the last 39 miles, which was great. So, we left Fort Tuthill, and, somewhere before we got to Walnut Canyon, the sun came up again. And, that was just another really great section of trail, before you get to Walnut Canyon. So I enjoyed that section. Wasn't moving incredibly fast, but I was still moving. So I was, in pretty good spirits once we got to Walnut Canyon, because once you get to that point, you're just like, well, I need to get up and over Eldon, and then I'm home. So left Walnut Canyon in great spirits, ready to make the climb up Eldon, and it took forever to get to Eldon. I mean, that is just the longest section. It feels like you'll never get to Eldon. We just kept going and going and didn't feel like we were getting any closer. And I was just getting more and more tired on the way to Eldon. And, again, I started falling asleep on my feet. That section was the first time I actually started having hallucinations. So, I was seeing people standing underneath trees. I was seeing cars, beside the trail. It was pretty wild. I was having a lot of hallucinations. So my pacer actually got some pretty good videos of me, telling him what I was seeing. So it was pretty comical. I sounded half drunk in the video, so it's pretty funny. But eventually, we got to the base of Eldon, and I was still just could barely stand up on my own. So My pacer was really good. He just started slowly, hiking up Eldon, and I was just following his steps, step by step. And we just steadily moved up and, made that 2 miles, 2,000 feet up Eldon. And once we got to the top of Eldon, then I sort of woke up. We got to the aid station. I had some food, and I knew all I had to do was, run that last 8 miles down to Flagstaff. And,
Was it still
fortunately,
daylight
I
by
actually,
then? Sorry.
it was,
Was it still
it
daylight
was
by then?
daylight. It was,
Yeah.
it was like, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I ended up finishing around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So,
Oh, nice.
but yeah, I mean, it was amazing. I had legs, felt good except for the blisters on my feet. So we ran all the way from the aid station into the finish. And I was so happy to make that right turn to finally see the finish line. So.
Yeah,
Did you
congrats.
get affected by the
That's
smoke?
just smoking fast time, yeah.
Yeah, we started smelling the smoke and seeing the smoke. I think we were better off than a lot of the people behind us. Because, once we finished, you could really see the smoke on the mountain. So I'm sure you suffered with that, Simon.
That was great. Yes. I think they started the fire when I was right around. They were like, Simon is there, let's light the fire. It was not cool. Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, thank you.
Simon, what about your day 4 there? How'd that go for you?
Yeah. So I was around Kelly probably, or anyway, I made it to Kelly. It was already daytime, but early morning. Super sleepy, but just taking my time at aid station, and I was still cruising. I was still feeling pretty good, like a mix of shuffling, running, most of the time when it's downhill or flat, and when it's uphill or technical, I would walk. Feeling pretty good. Made it all the way to Tuttle, and I kept kind of convincing myself that when I reach Tuttle, I'm gonna sleep. Like that's where I'm actually gonna lay down, sleep 1 hour. It's gonna feel good. But of course, I was lying to myself by then because I knew that the end was not so far. So I was just convincing myself to get there. So that once I'm there, I'm thinking, no, Simon, you don't have time for that. Like, let's go. Like, it's daytime. Like, you gotta go right now. Like, you'll sleep tonight. But that's also in that segment, reaching Tuttle is where the forest fires start and like all of the smoke. And I think we're probably really close to where it was because it was really, really bad. I was getting a lot of coughing, irritation in my eyes, irritation in my throat. And even like, it's hard to say like if it's me not sleeping for 3 days, full nights, or if it's the smoke, but I felt more sleepy than I was before. Like it felt worse, and I don't know if it's associated, like I was not getting enough oxygen, but it really didn't feel good. And I kept thinking, man, like climbing Eldon with that will be not great. But made it to Tuttle, and we had a friend there, Christine, like she was filming, but like she helped me with my aid station, which was really nice. And then I head out, decide not to sleep, go all the way to Walnut, and then I'll sleep at Walnut, of course, which it went pretty smoothly going there, although with a little bit of like sleeping on the side of the trail and these sorts of things. Made it to Walnut, and then I was like, no, it's still daytime. You gotta go right now. It's gonna be cold up Eldon. You gotta go right now. So convinced myself to go, which was a good decision. I think I made it pretty far. Like the segment that Chad was describing that takes forever, I feel I actually had a lot of energy in that one, and I was actually able to reach the base of Eldon fairly efficiently. But once I was really close to it, like when it starts climbing, but it's not like a cliff yet, I was getting sleepy, and it was already the beginning of the night, like very early evening, like right after sunset. And I knew it could be really cold up Eldon, especially at night, especially if it's windy. And I knew like once you start the climb, you got to go all the way. But I also knew it was technical, so you can't just be like a little bit in like not all there. Like if you have hallucination, like that's definitely not great. And without a pacer, like I have no one to tell me like, wait, Simon, like this is not the way actually. Like this is an actual cliff.
this cliff is the way. So I felt, okay, like let's actually sit down, well, like lay down like on a rock and sleep for 10-15 minutes to be as fresh as possible, because I knew I would not be able to do it later. That's also, it comes from not having a crew. I like all of the gear that I had, like all of the layers that I had to carry them the whole way. Like I don't have 5 different rain jacket, I don't have 5 different puffies, and the drop bags don't follow you. So I was carrying everything, and I had to wear everything I own at that point, which was definitely on the lower side of what you need to climb Elden if it's windy. But that's what I had, and definitely I say that with a lot of frustration, because I've seen people definitely muling for other people, which is not allowed. But they were definitely like giving their layers to their pacer, and I was like, yo, fuck you, like this is not cool. Like I'm freezing my ass up Elden because I cannot do that. So I was kind of pissed at that. But anyway, climbing Elden was a little bit cold, but it was not windy when I did it, so it was not so bad. And the 10-minute reset really helped me go the whole way. I was slow, like I was super slow, probably 1 mile an hour, but I just was able to keep going and having pretty secure footing the whole way, because it's not, I think if we were not tired, it wouldn't be considered that tricky. But when you're really tired and some of the segment is kind of a slope that is dusty a little bit, with the wrong footing, you could just kind of slide. So I was able to reach the top, and I knew it from at least Tuttle that it was kind of, I'm done. Like not I'm done, but like I'm gonna finish this thing. But there's still a grind to it that you need to do, and I felt like that a lot of the way, but especially from Tuttle upward. And at the top of Elden, it was 100% that. I looked to another guy, I was like, dude, like we're done, we did it. I just want to take the car to go down. Like I don't want to do these 8 miles. Like I know I can do it, but I don't want to do it. Like it's running on the road, it's just boring, and my blisters are painful. So I stayed there, ate a lot, and chatted with the people a little bit, and slept a little bit. And at some point I was like, okay, you gotta go now. So made it all the way to the finish line. It took me a good chunk of time to finish this segment, because I was just not motivated to go fast and finish at 3 a.m. So it's kind of a ghost town down there. But still, there was a reception, Jubilee giving the buckle, and Cam following me, and people in the chat cheering. So that was pretty cool, actually. So I was glad to finish at that point, though, and I was glad to go to bed.
Well, congrats as well, Simon. It's a valiant effort, solo, and you got some help from the trail community, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And from Thomas and from Keith and Gwen, which were the crew for Fanny and the crew for Brian. When they saw me, more at the beginning of the race, they were very, very helpful. So I very much appreciate that.
I got to the top of the Kasner climb right at sunrise, leaving Sedona, going towards Schnebley Hill, when we get onto the fire roads, or those 2-track dirt roads up there. And that's the start of my day 4, and I just started running. I kept running, I guess, not even started. I kept running. The climb out of Kasner Canyon, I didn't think was that bad, but I think that's a perspective thing from being a Coloradan. That's my element, so I enjoyed the punchy climbs like that, to break them up. I ran Schnebley to Munns, through Kelly Canyon. I loaded up on food. I hooked up with a guy named Ron, and he commented, he said, man, you're moving really well. You mind if I tag along? And the two of us were just ticking off the miles left and right, telling stories. He had done some major racing in his lifetime, so it was great to share in some of it with somebody else. We kind of both suffered getting into Fort Tuttle. It was just at the evening hours, about 7 p.m. And we had a little struggle. We actually missed a turn and had to backtrack and refine the trail. And so it's kind of frustrating when you're like 2 miles out from the aid station, but you still missed a turn. So that was totally on us. But yeah, so I get into Fort Tuttle. And prior to that, Thomas, my crew guy, had gotten some messages from a friend from Nebraska that may come out and help us out and do some pacing, and also shuttle the car. They were going to each take one of the sections between Tuttle to Walnut, and then Walnut, the other one would go Walnut to the finish line. So I was going to maybe get some help on the last 40 plus miles or 40 miles or so to get home. So the plan was, they wanted to know my input on the plan prior, a couple aid stations back, but I told them I didn't have the bandwidth to kind of help them out. Unfortunately, I was like disconnected. They were talking about flights and times and arrangements, and I was like, you guys are gonna have to figure this out on your own. So the message I got was that that my friend Lee was gonna show up at 10 o'clock, and we showed up at 7:30 at Fort Tuthill, and the Flagstaff Airport is right across the street from Fort Tuthill, literally across the interstate. So it was going to be this quick hop over. Lee was going to be ready by 10:15, 10:30, and we were going to be back on the trail. So I got a massage. I ate a ton of food. I laid down at Fort Tuthill. I was woken up at 1 a.m. by Thomas, and he told me that I had slept for 5 hours. And that Lee had finally arrived. His flight was delayed. It got rerouted for the smoke, apparently, or something. Went to Phoenix. He rented a car and drove up to Fort Tuthill. So I had slept for 5 hours. And so it was a little frustrating, but I couldn't change the fact that it already had happened. All I could really do is just kind of push on forward. So Lee and I pushed on forward really hard, actually. I mean, at that many miles in, I was running like 11, 12-minute miles consistently, just back to back to back, trying to stay within myself, but also make up a little bit of the ground that I may have lost by oversleeping. I went straight through Walnut Canyon. I mean, I grabbed like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and topped off my water and just kept on going straight through Walnut Canyon. With the momentum that I had, I was moving really well. I switched the pacers. Thomas jumped in, Lee jumped out, and we moved efficiently all the way to the climb. One of those camera guys from Marivipa caught me right at the bottom of the climb, and he was running with the gimbal right in front of me with the camera in my face and asking me all the important questions. Why am I doing this? And why am I here? And just a couple key questions. But it was actually really, it was really well timed. And of course, I didn't have the timing, but it was really well timed because it got me moving up the climb. And then when he went away, I was in the mindset of why am I here? And what am I doing here? And what do I hope to accomplish? So I had moved the rest of the way up that climb just smoothly and consistently. I didn't eat as much food as I wanted to at the top, but I did eat some food at Pete's Meats, and I tried to bomb down that hill. I lasted about 2 miles before I realized it was way too steep for me to be running that hard. And so I turned it off, and we made our way in at a more comfortable pace. And I finished at, I think it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday afternoon. So a full courtyard of people, a cheering crowd. Simon and Nora and a whole bunch of my other friends were there. So yeah, just a great time and a great experience all around. That's the end of my journey there.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Congrats.
congratulations. I was really happy to be able to see you finish, actually. We had to head out, so we were like, all right, come on, Brian, like you got to be a little faster, man. So, but you made it, so we're really happy. Yeah, that's great.
I wanted to touch on maybe one more question before we wrap this up. I know we're running a little long right now, but how about we go something lighthearted on this one? How about we go with the best aid station award? And I know we all hit our aid stations at different times, but if you got a little blue #1 ribbon, what would be your best aid station award? Which aid station would you hand that to? How about yourself, Chad?
They were all great in their own way. Believe me, I mean, I was so happy to see all of the aid stations. But I think, I don't know if it was timing or what, but really the Sedona aid station is the one for me that I really enjoyed the most, just because, the food was spot on, what I needed. The sleep station worked out great. There was a nice restroom in the sleep station, which was really welcome. So yeah, for me, the Sedona aid station was really good.
And Simon, how about your number one aid station?
I it's tough, but I guess I'll have to go. Also, it's a timing thing for me where my needs were met. Was the one after Whiskey Row, which I'm kind of blanking on the name, but it was the middle of the day. It was super hot, and people were super nice. And also, I had like feet problem, and I started talking. I think Gwen was still there, and I told her like I need socks. And then the guy at the aid station first gave me the Sloppy Joe or whatever, which turned out to be super good. And I took, I think, 2 of that, and like that really boosted me up, which was great. And then he also went to his truck and was like, "Hey, like I have socks." I decided not to take them because I didn't want to kind of switch things up. Like new sock, I don't know if it's gonna rub wrong, but it just was like, man, like you're really going above and beyond, like giving me your socks. That's just great. So I'll hand it to them. But unfortunately, I don't remember the name of the aid station, so. You know who you
That
are.
was Iron King.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a smaller
Iron
aid
King,
station,
man.
but it had
There you go, Iron
the
King.
mashed potato bar, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was my runner-up as well. So that mashed potato bar was amazing.
Well, maybe they get they definitely Iron King gets definitely honorable mention because that is also my runner-up. It's where I turn my race around, but I owe it to the mashed potato Sloppy Joe bowls that I devoured. But my go-to, I'm gonna say, I think it was Mingus. It was even though I didn't feel that great there, man, I just loved those lasagna, salad, and bread. I ate mountains of that food. I got a quick adjustment, and even though I didn't leave feeling that great, I felt better than when I came in. And I just thought they did a really good job. It was nice and warm. All those things. So that was warm and fuzzy for me. And there's something nostalgic about it. It's I know, Chad, you mentioned that you watched the previous renditions on the live feed. And I don't know, something about Mingus Mountain every time, the way the front porch is really long and everyone staggers up those stairs. I felt like I had a moment of nostalgia. I was like, I've never been here, but man, I am here now. You know, I've seen it 3 times in a live feed before on everyone's YouTube videos that of their race recaps. And so, I feel like I finally had made it. So I really enjoyed Mingus Mountain. I soaked it all in for sure.
Yeah, I had a similar feeling whenever I hit Mingus. I felt like I had been there before, even though I hadn't really physically been there.
Well, thanks so much, guys. I appreciate the debrief from Cocodona. I just got 2 quick things here. Hopefully, we can get through them pretty quickly. Some shout outs real quick is Chris T ran his first 50 miler in Fort Collins this past weekend while we were running across Arizona. He was running around his first 50 miler in Fort Collins. He went sub 12. So congrats, Chris. And then our very own Nora. What did Nora do? She did the PCT 50, Simon?
Yeah, so I said that I had like one motivation was to arrive at Jerome before the 125 would start. My other motivation was that Nora was racing Saturday morning and we had to be out of Arizona by then. So I really, really needed to finish the latest midday Friday, which also was why, Brian, you had to kind of hurry up, but you didn't know that. So we watched Brian finish, drove all the way to California, and she was doing the PCT 50. It was hot. She fell down once and bumped her knee pretty bad, and she puked from the pain. So it was a good race for her. But she made it. I think she finished 7th on the female side. So really, really proud of my Nora. Really happy also that I was able to kind of crew her. I didn't pace. I don't know why I didn't pace. I guess I'm lazy. But it was great that she was able to have a race also. So very proud of her.
Well, congrats, Nora. And again, congrats to both of you guys as well. I know we all work hard at these things, and they don't come easy. And I have a greater appreciation for Arizona after this past week there myself. Chad, though, thanks so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to watching all your future races, and wish you the best of success moving forward.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I enjoyed the chat, and it's good seeing you guys again.
Yeah, likewise.
Take care.
I'm Simon, and that's Brian.
We'd be thrilled to connect with you beyond our show.
For all of your endurance coaching requirement, you can reach out to Coach Brian at altitudeendurancecoaching.com.
To explore more of Simon's content, visit Running with Simon on YouTube.
Don't forget to rate, like, and share our content regularly.
Your support means a lot to us. Thanks.